great sage. Various psychological and spiritual practices can help some people improve their personal lives, while others don't. Could negative influences in a natal chart indicate that it's fate that can't be changed?
Oh, Maitreya, this is a very profound question, not an easy one to answer, but I will, of course, attempt to do so. So, the ancient texts think about karma in three different types of categories, right? Flexible karma, firm karma, fixed karma. What does that mean? It's a various degrees of intensity. So if a karma is a more flexible sort of thing, it's not so strongly indicated in the chart. It becomes something that is more possible to change with efforts, right? And working on yourself and different spiritual practices, psychological interventions, and so forth. It can really change that. And to a lesser degree, when the karma is more firmed, right? It makes it more difficult. You have to sort of apply yourself more intensely in order to bring about that sort of change. And, you know, in the ancient texts, they talk about these spiritual practices. You don't just do them a couple of days and things change. They talk about sustaining that practice over a period of time in order to bring about any significant difference or change. Now, the last category, karma, fixed karma, is that karma that is very difficult to change. And it might be something that just has to be accepted and you might say managed, right? So the big question becomes, well, how do you tell in a birth chart between such karma, right? Or how do you tell in a birth chart that a karma is rather fixed and not very amenable, not very possible to change? So I want to pull up a chart and kind of illustrate that. This is a chart of a woman now in her mid-60s who never married. Now, she's had a number of relationships and had a number of what might be called marriage-like situations, but it's never been her karma to have a legal sacramental marriage. And in general, relationships have been a problem area in her life. As I said, she's had a number of relationships, but they're all tend to be difficult and they don't tend to last. So how can this be seen in her birth chart? That's a rather fixed karma. Where we start is with Venus, who's the natural karaka of these things. And we see that her Venus is weak in that it's in its debilitation sign. And there really isn't any cancellation of the debility. And then additionally, it gets the aspect of Saturn. So the natural karaka of love and marriage and love relationships is a very difficult, poor condition here. And then the seventh house itself doesn't get any influence, but the seventh lord, which is the moon, goes to the 12th house. It's with Jupiter, but in this case, Jupiter is also the 12th lord. And the difficult thing is that this moon as the seventh lord is both with Saturn, planet of delay and denial, and then Mars, planet of conflict. So it has this double affliction of the two most problematic malefics, natural malefics in the birth chart. So that's the karaka, and that's the perspective of the seventh house, seventh lord from the birth lagna. But to do a further, more thorough analysis of her relationship karma, we also have to use the moon as the first house and see what's happening to the seventh house, seventh lord from there. So if you use the moon in Sagittarius as the first house, the seventh house would be Gemini, gets the aspect of Saturn again. So see the similarity or the confluence this way. The seventh lord becomes Mercury, who is with Rahu, and also gets the aspect of Mars again. So do you see the repetition of the pattern? There's the influence of malefics, in this case all malefics, on the seventh house or seventh lord from the moon. And then the third perspective that we look at is using the position of Venus as if it's the first house, and see the seventh house, seventh lord from there. Seventh house from Venus in Virgo becomes Pisces, and the Lord then becomes Jupiter. And again, we get the influence of Saturn. So from every perspective, from the influence on the karaka Venus, influence on the seventh house, seventh lord, from three perspectives, from the birth lagna, from the moon, from karaka Venus, we see the influence of Saturn, planet of delay, sometimes denial. And these are the patterns in her chart that show that the obstacles for her having fulfillment in relationship life is consistent in all three. And this represents more of a fixed karma. So, and this types of karma is more difficult to change. But you can always try. So she wasn't able to change anything externally, right? But through spiritual practices, she was able to become at peace with it. She used to suffer strongly from wanting a relationship that was the kind that she wished to have and not having this. But after a lot of spiritual practice, she got to the point where she didn't suffer from not having the kind of relationship she wants, which is a big change. Nothing changed externally, but something changed internally, right? So this is something to keep in mind as well. And this is how I'd answer this question.
Thank you, Maharishi.
You're very welcome, Maitreya.